Welcome to the Entre Pastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Entre Pastors podcast on YouTube. I'm Jon Sanders, one of the co-founders of Entre Pastors, as well as the co-host of the podcast, and I'm so delighted to have you joining us for this episode. I'm curious, Pastor, have you ever thought about having an online platform of your own? We think at Entre Pastors that many pastors are situated very well to do just that. I mean, pastors are content creators. We haven't always called it that. We've just called it, writing and speaking sermons and doing other teaching and that sort of a thing. But if you think about it, it's content creation, and chances are really good you have files and files of content that you have created over the years, and you're probably even good at it. What if you were able to take that content and create a platform online that you could not only grow and serve others through the message of what you're sharing, but also monetize that platform as a way to bring some additional revenue streams into your family? Well, the guest on our show today helps people do exactly that. His name is Jon Stange. He's been in pastoral ministry for well over 25 years and has done a masterful job of launching, growing, and monetizing several different online platforms. And you guys are in for a treat as you hear me and my co-host Les Hughes have this conversation with Jon about how he did it and how he's now teaching other people to do the very same thing. So sit back, get ready for a great interview. It's coming your way right now. Check out this conversation we had with our friend Jon Stange as we learn how to plant, launch, grow, monetize our online platform. Here we go. Well, Jon Stange, it is our absolute pleasure to welcome you back as a returning guest to the Entre Pastors podcast, man. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I was looking forward to this conversation today, and I have no shame in admitting that I listen to your podcast every single week, and that's not an exaggeration. I always listen to it on Fridays.
How about
well, thanks, man. That means a lot, seriously, especially coming from you. We greatly respect you and the work that you're doing, and you've been a friend of the show since the beginning, man. You've been a friend of Entre Pastors since we got started. I think we were introduced pretty early on by, was it Ryan Rieger that might have introduced us? I can't remember.
It was Greg Tosi, and then but Ryan Rieger was at your first live event, and we got connected in that context as well.
Yeah, there it is. It was Greg Tosi, not Ryan Rieger. But anyway, and you were so generous to have Les and I on, and just resonated, with the message that we were trying to get out into the world. And so anyway, man, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and to see the things that you have been doing. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into one of your more recent books. I was inspired earlier this summer. I was, what?
Jon wrote a book?
Yeah, Jon Stange has written about
Stange, you wrote a book?
I did.
I'm just kidding. I read the last one. I've read the most recent one with Jon. I was holding out on you, man. I was silent before the show because Jon said he enjoyed the book. Did you hear crickets on my end? I didn't, but I really did. I liked it. It was great.
I appreciate that.
Was that the thing you were waiting to do, Les? Was that your big reveal that we were?
No. Yeah. Yes and no. Jon,
yes and no.
Our listeners don't know what you're talking about, Jon.
I know. We had a little moment before we hit record on this. So anyway, so Jon, I was inspired reading your book that we'll talk about in a minute. A few months ago, I was on the beach and I was like, man, we need to have Jon back on and have a conversation about this. But before we jump into the deep dive, for those that maybe did not hear the first interview that you did with us and don't know who Jon Stange is, give a little bit of an introduction to who you are and the work that you do in this world.
So it's multifaceted, and sometimes when I tell people the list, I wonder if it overwhelms them, but somehow this all fits together, I promise. I've been pastoring full-time for 25 years and also was part-time on staff for a couple of years prior to that. And in addition to that, I also teach digital media at Cairn University. I lead that program for the university. It's exciting. It's my alma mater, and they just added that as a major. And they allow me and encourage me and invited me to teach the content that I teach online now at the university. And so in the online world, I do a bunch of podcasts, 3 of which are faith-based. So there's the Chapter a Day audio Bible. There is Daily Devotions with Pastor Jon, and then there's Dwell on These Things. And then I also have a business podcast called Platform Launchers, and an online community called Platform Launchers, where I teach people how to build, grow, and monetize online platforms. And then I write some books as well. And so that's probably a fair and quick overview without boring those that are listening.
You got that thing dialed in, John. That's pretty creative, man.
How do
Thanks.
you fit all that on a business card?
No kidding.
Yeah, that's why I'm grateful for the internet. Now you just point people to the internet. You don't have to try and fit it on a business
Seriously.
card.
The
The
first
business
time I heard
card is
you,
the book.
the first time I heard you explain all that, it took a lot longer than you just took.
I'm
do
getting
it.
better at it.
No
That was my
kidding.
first try on your show, and so now this is the second try. So I'm trying to be more succinct.
I'm gonna
You
have to
nailed
call
it.
y'all, since you're both John. I'm gonna have to say Saunders and Stange. So,
Okay.
Sanders, do you see
Yeah.
the rocket over the man's shoulders? Does that remind you of the time that you tried to steal his logo?
Okay, so we got a quick story to share here. First of all, it was
You may
not
not know that.
me. No, I think I did tell John. Did I tell you that, John?
You told me that. Yeah.
We when we came up with our business launch academy, one of our team members, found a rocket to kind of symbolize that launching thing, and I looked at that rocket and I was like, I've seen this rocket somewhere
That's a
before.
good rocket.
Realize this is John Stange's rocket. We can't use his rocket. We got to find our own rocket. So,
Oh, that's fun.
And it was already it was a mock-up. Like it was the logo, and there was EP right on there, and we just thought that may not be.
That looks
quite
too
what we wanted.
familiar.
John Stange is going to sue us. We got to change course.
No wonder we liked it so much.
And again, for our audio listeners, are like, what rocket are they talking about? For those of you watching on YouTube, you can see the logo for Platform Launchers behind John's shoulder there. But so, John, serious question. When someone asks you, what do you do? We that's part of our culture when we greet somebody after we say, how are you doing? Oh, what do you do? How do you answer that question in a short version for somebody?
I don't have a way to answer it in a short way. And so I think sometimes I answer it differently depending on the context that I'm in. So in certain contexts, I would just, I'd start off with, I've been serving as a pastor for a bunch of years, but in other contexts, it seems more appropriate to say professor. And then sometimes I find myself in a context where it's more appropriate to say either podcaster or author. And somehow it all works together. But someone actually asked me a few years ago, they said, do you consider yourself more of a podcaster or an author? And I consider myself more of a podcaster, even though I like writing books. There's something about podcasting that I have just really gravitated toward and really enjoy. And I've been grateful that the Lord's chosen to bless the efforts that I've been putting into podcasting. And in many respects, I look at it and I think, boy, this is one of the most effective ways to share the message of the gospel and to share all the different things that I care deeply about. And what a wonderful time to live that we have this option.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
cool. I do the same thing, just kind of depending on what my company is and what the context of the conversation. I may say I'm a firefighter, may say I'm a pastor, may say I'm a podcaster, but I try not to tell the whole story unless someone's genuinely interested. But in this
Right.
case, John, we are genuinely interested. So tell us everything. Hold nothing back.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
So here's the book I'm holding up for our online or for our YouTube audience that can see this. Jon Stange wrote a book called Build, Grow, and Monetize Your Online Platform. And I think the direction I want to take us in here, John, is maybe to ask you to give kind of the 30,000 foot overview of your workflow. And I know we've asked you to talk about this before, but and then I'm going to start breaking it down, because really in the book, that's what you do. You start to talk about all the different elements of your online platform, from blogging to podcasting to writing books and membership community and all of that stuff. But why don't we just kind of start at the 30,000 foot overview and share a little bit about how you take content you've already created and then multi-purpose that stuff into all kinds of different avenues and And then once people feel overwhelmed, we'll break it down and make it not feel so overwhelming. So go ahead.
So knowing that a lot of the people that are listening to us right now have a ministry background, probably the best example I could give them is really where I started with breaking down the content into different forms. And one of the things that frustrated me for the longest time was the fact that as a pastor, I create a sermon each week and all sorts of content. And for many, many years, that content went nowhere after it was preached in front of a live audience. There was no record of it. The notes from it didn't become anything. The audio of it wasn't recorded. It was, you were either there or you weren't. And then the sermon that I worked on for all that time, for a week, that those notes went into a file, and maybe I'd get the chance to use them again, or most often I'd get the chance never to use them again, and they just sit there. And that used to frustrate me because it felt like it wasn't the best stewardship. And so somewhere along the way, I decided to start using the sermon content in blog form, and I'd share it online. And then I take that blog content and I also record it into podcasts, and I do other things with podcasts. And then I can also use that written content for book chapters and for newsletters. And I can take some of the audio and video of that content and use it for courses. And basically, one of my favorite things to do, I reference it frequently as being a content waterfall. I like taking one piece of written content and figuring out 4, 5, or 6 different ways that I could repurpose it after it's written. So audio, video, further written content, social media, any of those things. But that's basically what I do. I usually start with one piece of written content that gets repurposed in each of those avenues.
Yeah, and here's what I would imagine that for many, well, first of all, before I get into the breaking this down a little further, let's just back up and talk to the majority of our audience, which is pastors. And it's obvious from my vantage point why this would be kind of a natural step for a pastor to take. We are ultimately content creators, have been for many years, right? Every 7 days we're creating content to deliver on a Sunday. You've just taken that content and found a lot of different ways to repurpose that and really build some platforms around that. So maybe just speak to that pastor that's like, man, he just talked about blogging and podcasting and writing books. Like, it just seemed, how do I even get into all of that? And maybe we are getting into where we're breaking this down, but maybe just speak to that pastor that's like, I've always thought about doing a podcast or a blog, but maybe they don't want to jump into the to this extent of what you've got going. Because did you start with all of this stuff, or did you primarily start with one platform and add to it as that started to go? Like, I think that's what I'm trying to have you speak to, is just that sense of, man, he's doing all this stuff. I don't even have one of these things. Where do I begin?
For me, it was very gradual. So the process that I describe is something that happened over the course of years, not over the course of just a few days or anything like that. As I would get new ideas, I would then incorporate them. And so if someone's listening to us right now, they're probably thinking, all right, how could I repurpose my content? Where should I start? I would actually encourage them to probably start with blogging. Just get a simple Squarespace website. They're very easy to set up. Pick a blog template and just take your sermon notes and turn them into a weekly blog post, and then just share the link to that blog post on your personal social media. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Just start off with that. If you want to add podcasting, your Squarespace account will let you add a podcast. You won't even have to pay anything else. You could just set it up inside your Squarespace. And that's where I would start. If I was recommending this to somebody, that's where I would tell them to start. And if they want to branch out from there, there's all kinds of avenues they can go if they want to get deeper into it. But I didn't start with a Squarespace account. I started with another platform and then discovered how easy Squarespace was to use and how it got good SEO and all that. And so blogging and podcasting and things like that became like a very quick and natural thing that I started doing early on, and these things started developing over time. But if someone was just saying, like, on day one, what should I do? I'd say just get a Squarespace account and turn your sermon content into a weekly blog post, and then stick with it. Never miss a week. Don't skip a week.
Tell me more about that. Why do you give that advice of not skipping a week?
So a lot of people are dreamers and very few people in this world are doers. And most people are content consumers, but very few people are content creators. And I have discovered, especially as my platform has grown, and that's put me in different circles with other people. And I've had the chance now to meet people that I used to just know about from a distance, people that I admire. Now, some of those people I look at and I consider them personal friends. And I have noticed a very regular trait among those that seem to get ahead in this world, and that's consistency. People that don't quit easily. And most people are dreamers that say, "Oh, I'd love to have a blog," and they start it and they'll post something for 2 or 3 weeks and then they quit. And the people that you and I know that are successful are typically people that they just don't quit. They just keep going. Quitting is not something that's easily in their vocabulary. And whether or not they have a big audience on day one, they just decide to be consistent and stick with it because in their mind, it's the right thing to do. It's the thing they've committed to. And it's the people that stay consistent without quitting that end up eventually gaining the traction and the momentum that they're looking for.
That's good. What advice would you give to somebody who is saying, well, what do I blog about? Or maybe a better question would be this. Does it have to be my sermon content? Can it, is it okay if I'm a pastor and want to, build a platform around something that's not really straight up church related or sermon related or whatever? Like how would you advise that person with that question?
Yeah, I would say the easiest thing to do is to take the content that you already have, your sermon content, and blog that. But if you felt like doing something else, I totally get that because I do something else also. I have a faith-based platform where I'm taking my sermon content plus creating additional content and sharing various things related to our faith. But then I also have platform launchers, which is all about helping people build, grow, and monetize online platforms. And I love the business side of things online. And I developed an entire platform focused on that. And it's structured very much the same way that I structured my faith-based content, where I'm starting with one piece of written content each week and then turning it into a variety of things, which has also become a membership community and courses and a podcast and books and all sorts of things. But the pattern is the same. I would just say if someone's listening right now and they're thinking about doing this, pick whichever topic you think you're most likely to stick with for 3 straight years.
Hmm. For a long time, I've given the advice of like specifically to podcasters when someone's getting ready to launch a podcast. I've coached a number of people through that. And basically, I've said, if you're not willing to give it 52 weeks of consistent content, you're saying 3 years, which I'm not arguing with because I've been hearing that number more and more recently. Mm-hmm. So I might need to up my, might need to triple my weeks that I'm telling someone and challenging them. Why do you say 3 years? What's the significance of that number?
So there'll be moments prior to that are inspiring, moments where you get to see success and different things that really start to gel if even before a 3-year mark. But early on, whenever you're building something, you're the main marketer and it doesn't have much momentum to it. But I've noticed in church life, I've seen it with churches. I've also seen it with online content creation and online platforms, that if you stick with something for 3 years, by the end of year 3, you don't have to be the primary or only marketer for it. It tends to build momentum where other people start talking about what you're doing, and it's not just you talking about it.
How long have you been doing this? What year are you in? If you
so
were
platform launchers is 2 years old, and the previous platform that I've had going, I really started that in about I think it was about 2015 or 2014. I really started to get that going.
Okay. And I do want to have a conversation around monetization because that's part of the title of your book. And there is a business aspect to what you're doing. I still think this is amazing to me, Jon, that in the year 2023, at the time of us recording this, people are still blown away by the fact that you can earn not just a living, but a significant living by creating content online. I think some people hear that and go, that's too good to be true, or I have no idea. So how do you get people to pay you for the content that you create and put out there? Like maybe just share some of those different streams, if you will, or strategies to help people understand where does that money actually come from? Like, how is that created?
I think for me, it started with listening to people and figuring out the kind of help they were actually asking me for. So I didn't have this vision to start platform launchers when I first got into creating online content. I just wanted to help people grow in their faith. And I was creating content that would help encourage people in their walk with Christ. I was creating content that would help people learn the Bible. And I wasn't putting it out there with the goal to monetize it or do anything like that. I was just trying to encourage people in their spiritual walk. And over time, that content started growing, and then opportunities came about where people wanted to advertise on the podcasts and the blog and pay me to speak at different things or do workshops or whatever it may be. And I thought, oh wow, how neat that this thing that I was willing to do for free is now something that I'm able to actually earn at least a part-time income from. And I thought that was great. And then once I passed that 3-year mark, especially with the podcasts, then stuff really started blowing up and getting a lot of attention. And additional opportunities like a traditional book deal with Penguin Random House came about. And, there was a nice advance that came with that. And so, like, all sorts of things came about in that respect. And then I noticed people started asking me not just questions about my faith, which is what I was used to people asking about, but they started asking, hey, could you tell us more about the mechanics of how to do this? Like, if I want to start a blog, what's an easy way to start a blog? If I want to start a podcast, what's an easy way to start a podcast? If I want to advertise on the blog after I get it started up, how do I go about getting advertisers? And it dawned on me that people kept asking me questions related to online platform development. They wanted to know the mechanics. And so I started developing courses that just showed people how to build simple websites and monetize them. And then over time, I realized this right here is the main thing people are asking me about from a business standpoint. And I thought, well, let me create courses that show people how to build, grow, and monetize a platform. And let me write a book about it. And let me start up a membership community about it. And let me create some courses about it. And it really came about by listening to what people were asking me for. And you even threw in the idea of coaching there. Coaching being, by the way, the quickest way to monetize an online platform. I didn't offer coaching at first when I created platform launchers because that was during a season where, in like 2021, where I was still dealing with a whole bunch of just like counseling just from my pastoral role. So I felt really burned out with all the counseling that I'd been doing in 2020 and 2021 and just what culture was like at that point. So I didn't really want to add coaching. I felt like I was doing enough of that. But then over time, people were like, could you please add coaching? I would like some one-on-one coaching. And I finally added that, and that became another revenue stream with the platform. But the shortest answer to your original question is basically listening to what people wanted to pay me for my help for. People were telling me what they wanted, and I offered that. And that's a big difference between what I see a lot of people do. A lot of people have this idea in mind of what they want to do, but when they boil it down, no one's ever asked them to do that. And no one's really even indicated that they might be willing to pay them to do that. And then sometimes they get disappointed. I think sometimes it's better to figure out, what do people actually want from me, and then start to focus on it that way.
That's good. Les, were you getting ready to say something? It looked like you were jumping in there.
No.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to
No.
cut you off if you were getting ready to jump in there.
No, man, that's all right.
So, Jon, of all the income streams that you've created through this platform, what has been, I don't know if the easiest is the right way I want to ask that question, but what's been the most natural form of income stream, or maybe even just list, you don't have to go through all of them, but give us an example of some of the different ways that you have monetized your platform, just so people, again, get an understanding of what this looks like. Is it's not all necessarily people just paying you for your one-on-one time and coaching, or even courses. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you've monetized your platform. So what are some of those ways, and what has been some of the most natural ways for you to begin receiving income as a result of the platform and the content you've created?
I love the fact that you said there, you don't even have to go through all of them, because I love the fact that there can be multiple streams of income. And so it's a little comical when you say that. I keep a list, by the way, in my phone of the different streams of income that I've got going on, whether it's platform related or not. And I do it as like a little bit of a game where I try and figure out how can I add another stream of income that doesn't take up much, if any, time after I get it set up. But one of the things that let's see. All right. Well, so the different ways that I'm able to monetize it. So one is obviously through coaching. I list that first because that's the easiest one to get set up, especially if you have some level of online authority. If people are you don't even have to have a course or anything like that set up. So the one-on-one time, definitely a helpful thing if you're looking to monetize early. I actually just read a story last week of a guy who started an online platform, and in his first year, this is atypical, but it does happen, was earning a six-figure income in his first year, and the only thing he offered was one-on-one coaching. So that can be, and most people, the average rate for an hour of coaching, when I look on the internet, I check to see if this increases or decreases, but the average rate for an hour of coaching is $200. And I know people that charge more than that. I have a good friend who charges $1,000 an hour for coaching. I have another good friend. She charges $2,500 an hour for coaching. And I asked her, I said, do you get that? And she said, yeah, I get that. And I said, what inspired you to charge so much? And she said, well, I charge so much because I don't really want to do a whole bunch of it. And I figured if I put a big price tag on it, people wouldn't ask me to do it as much. And yet she still finds herself getting asked to do it. And people pay $2,500 for an hour of her time. So that's one thing. So I do offer one-on-one coaching. But then there's also group coaching that happens through a membership community. And that one is very natural for me. You ask that question, like, what's natural? Well, as a pastor, I love speaking and teaching in front of groups. I even record the Platform Launchers podcast live in front of our membership community. They're live on the call with me. And so I don't have much of a net. If I goof something up, it's in front of a live group one way or another. And I have found that to be a very natural way to communicate and teach and record the podcast. And obviously leading a membership community is something, as I'm helping people develop sources of income, as I'm helping them, it obviously is a source of income for me as well. But it's also a more affordable way for people to get coaching, because when you're in a group, it's a lot cheaper than if you pay individual coaching. I also have the courses. The courses feel pretty natural. I really like that. I monetize through advertising on my website. There's website advertising. I do that some, but on my podcasts, I have mid-rolls and I have outros on my faith-based podcasts now that are supplied through the Salem Media Group, which is the network that I joined not too long ago. I brought all my faith-based shows onto their platform, and I do receive income through that. I also, this was a unique one. I was at Chick-fil-A with my family, and I got an email from somebody that said, hey, is there any chance you would put a link to our site in this blog post on your Platform Launchers webpage? And if you could create that link, and if you're comfortable with linking to us, we'll pay you $120. And I looked at it and I was like, this is going to be the easiest $120 I've ever made in my entire life. And so I thought, yeah, I'll be happy to do it. But that site has authority because I blog and create fresh content on it every single week. And because of that, they were willing to pay to have a backlink on it. And I thought, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. So that's like a little bit of a sample. I mean, I also sell banner ads for my websites, and people pay for, running advertisement that way.
You sell books. I don't know. Maybe you mentioned that.
I
got lost all the way in all of that. So
right. I always, they take so long to create. You'd think I'd remember that I write them, right? But I have a variety of books that I sell. And the other thing that I like to do with the books is when I post a link to one of those books on my website, I make sure that it's an Amazon affiliate link, so that when people click to buy the book, if they buy anything else on Amazon within 24 hours of clicking that link, I also get a commission for that. And so that's a helpful thing as well. And there's a few other things also, but those would be some of the main things that come to mind. And just as an encouragement to those that are listening, don't feel overwhelmed with any of that stuff. That's just all gradual stuff. You just add it one piece at a time. The most important task, if you feel like you have a calling to develop an online platform, is to figure out your message and then just keep releasing helpful content related to the message. This other stuff will all come together in time. Mission one, though, is just get your message out there.
Yeah. Something I wanted to touch on there is, and it ties into that theme of consistency that you mentioned earlier. I think the temptation is, especially in our social media world where we're all about the fast results, is people are thinking, man, I gotta go viral. I gotta have that one video, that one episode, that one blog post that just goes nuts. And it's like, well, maybe, but most likely the reason you got asked to, get paid $120 for sharing a backlink to someone else's site is simply because you had been consistent and prolific in your content creation, that over time you get those. It's a lot of seeds being planted instead of just one seed that turns into this ginormous tree. So I want people to hear that's why we need to get started sooner than later, and why we need to stick with it, because it takes time for those seeds to be planted and grown and produce fruit. So
hey, John, let me ask you a question that goes back to this gets into a little bit of the nuance of your own business, but John and I wrestle with this, and so surely there's somebody else that does as well. I guess it's the bigger subject is pricing, and all of the gymnastics that we do mentally to come up with something. But you mentioned that you do have a membership, as John and I do. It's different, but some similarities. And then the issue there is, all right, how much can we give them? What's the value here, and what needs to be the promise? But when you start to repurpose, then you're dealing with, well, all right, these guys are paying for something here, and how much can I give away to a different audience, and an audience that may not be paying anything? So I know part of the answer to this, but again, it's something that we have a conversation about every once in a while. So when you're talking about you're talking real time with some subject matter for the people that are on those calls, their video calls. And I've been on at least one of those before. It's very informative, and they're engaging with one another. But then the content is shared with your community at large in the form of a podcast. So how do you personally, as the founder and the content creator, determine, what goes where, and what you charge for, and what you give away?
So I usually draw the line between content and access. So a lot of the content I create, most of the content that I create, I give away for free, and just to be helpful, just because it's it just feels like a great thing to do. But even from a marketing standpoint, I think it's helpful. It's a great way, a very effective way to market what you're doing by just providing helpful content. Now there are some forms of content that are behind a paywall. So I have a video library that's behind a paywall. I do have the books are behind a paywall. I have courses that are behind a paywall. So there are some forms of content that are paid for, but 90% of the content I create, I give away free. The difference between, like, for instance, if somebody joins my membership, I think a lot of times they actually join for the content. They think, let's join for the content, and we'll get access to the video library and stuff like that. But then what they discover is the greater benefit that they get is the inspiration of being part of a community. So they're surrounded by other people, and then they get access to me where they can ask their questions in real time and not just have to wonder those things in the back of their head. And then there's also a form of accountability. And I've noticed that people that plug into that, they actually seem to get things done quicker, and they get ideas from other people. And then there ends up being some celebration that happens when they have someone to share their successes with, because they're finding a tribe of people that speak their own language. And so that's kind of how I differentiate it. Most of the content I give away for free. Some is behind a paywall, but it's really access and community that differentiates a membership versus content only.
Yeah.
You know, John, you mentioned your course and your membership community, and really your superpower, at least as it pertains to the platform launchers, is exactly that. It's helping people launch an online platform. And with Entree Pastors, you know, our whole thing is we want to help pastors develop, you know, an additional stream of revenue or more through entrepreneurial, you know, efforts that could be an online platform. So certainly we have people in our community who are pursuing writing and coaching and speaking and those types of things. But we also have people that are doing all kinds of other things. So I want to talk about partnerships for a minute, because for a while, I'll be very transparent. Les and I were talking about making a similar kind of a course, like how do you launch a podcast? How do you, you know, get into coaching? How do you get into some of these things? And I'll be honest, as I was reading your book here a few months ago, I'm like, Jon Stange is the expert on this. Like, we just need to bring him into our community and introduce him to our people. As if you want to build an online platform, John's your guy. Like, you need to just learn from him. And so we're thrilled that you've allowed us to put your course inside of our Pastors Business Alliance as a way to serve our community. And again, there's an affiliate relationship there. There's no secret in that. And that's the beauty of having these types of relationships in the online space, is that you can, you know, really help people get the help that they need and still benefit from it, you know. And when you have that kind of abundant, open-handed posture toward the people you're serving and the people that you might be tempted to look at as competition, but instead seeing as, man, let's collaborate, let's build something together and serve people together. So there's not really a question in that, other than I just wanted to highlight the fact that we're highlighting your course. Like, we're pointing to you as the expert in this space to our community, saying, listen, if you want to grow in this, John's your guy. He's already invented the wheel. It's a nice wheel. It's a good wheel. Just there's no sense in us trying to reinvent that wheel. Like, go learn from Jon and we'll help you do that. So
And you said something there, a concept that I wish more people would embrace, this idea of, and I mean, it's like so many people think they're in competition with everybody when it comes to different things. And the open-handed concept of just being generous, just being absolutely generous with what you have, I think is a wonderful thing. And I also want to encourage people, even if they have an idea, let's say someone's listening right now and they think, you know, I'd like to build a platform, but, you know, there's already someone doing this and there's already someone doing that. Your platform is not going to be like theirs, even if your subject is the same as theirs, because the thing that's different is you. Right. And there are certain people that will connect with you and your personality and your teaching style that won't connect with other people. And so be generous with what you have and don't treat what you're doing online as a form of competition. One of the most disappointing things that I have experienced since I've gotten into the online space are people that act like everything's a competition. And I try not to spend a whole lot of time with people that behave that way, because it's just not a mindset that I want to get into. And I strongly prefer the kind of mindset and model that we've talked about from the beginning, of just being generous with what the Lord blesses us with. We're only temporary stewards of it anyway for a short period of time, so we might as well just be generous with it. And I'm grateful. I appreciate the kind words that you just shared about me and what I'm doing, but I'm also super grateful for what you guys are doing. One of the things that I didn't mention when we started our conversation here about some of the hats that I wear, I also direct a mission board that helps plant churches in various parts of the United States. And almost all of our guys, there's only like one or two that aren't bivocational. The rest are bivocational. And I always tell them, I'm like, guys, you got to check out the Entree Pastor podcast and all the things that they have going on, because there's a great need to build up secondary sources of income to help fund ministries. And that's a big motivation you guys have. And that's a big motivation I have as well. And so I love sending people your way also. So thank you for that mutual relationship. There's a lot of respect all the way around.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Hey, one other question, maybe another direction I want to go, and this we'll nerd out a little bit here and get into some
Let's do it.
of content creation and just being in this online platform space. But talk to me a little bit about this whole world of artificial intelligence. Like, are you leaning into that? Are you utilizing any of these tools? If so, I'd love to learn from you. We're just kind of experimenting with it on our end right now, but what say you to that?
So I think it's interesting, especially as someone who's done voiceover work. There's one where I had it mimic my voice. I wanted to see if it would be a shortcut to creating audiobooks of some of my books, and it didn't sound just right. Like it sounded very like you could it was pretty good. It was almost there. And I thought, boy, if I could just replicate my voice and I could make audiobooks of all my old books, but that wasn't quite there. But what I've discovered, I'm kind of in the boat that you guys are in as far as when it comes to AI and things like that, experimenting a little bit to see if there might be some applications for it. But one thing that it's really good for is being kind of a research assistant when you're looking to outline a blog article or do something like that. Frequently, in recent months, I'll put a little content in there and just see what kind of subjects it brings up if I'm looking to write about a specific subject, and I often get good ideas that I can incorporate into a blog post or something like that. So that's kind of the extent to how I've been using AI. I don't use it that much, but when I'm like scratching my head for an idea or some inspiration, I find it really practical for just trying to come up with an outline or do a little background research on some things. But you do have to fact check it a little bit because I've noticed certain things. The best is when you ask AI to tell you about yourself. So if you've ever done that, and like some of the things that it says about me crack me up because I'm like, nope, don't have that degree. Nope, didn't go to that seminary. And I'm like, wow, you're giving me credentials and degrees that I didn't earn.
Yeah.
So thanks, AI. But it's kind of funny.
Yeah, we're just kind of playing with it right now, and I'll be happy to share a few of the ways we're utilizing it. But one more question for you. Tell me about your social media. Like, do you have a strategy for regular content that, like, I'm talking like bite-sized posts that you're putting out in Facebook, or what other platforms are you on with social media? And then I'll tell you about me and Les and our relationship with social media.
Okay. When it comes to social media, I treat it as a bonus, but not something that I try and build my platform on. So I primarily use social media for relationship building. And I'll share encouraging things just about my day-to-day life, things about my faith, things about something that interests me. If I'm in the market for a new car, I might ask people for an opinion. I try and let it be a genuine extension of my day-to-day life. Even on Friday nights, my wife and I always go out for dinner on Friday night, and we'll post something online where I'll take a picture of her food and I'll take a picture of my food, and then we'll ask people to vote on which meal they would have gotten if they were at the table with us. And we just like to compete to see who wins. But I primarily use social media for relationship building. And then when I have something to promote, I never sell or almost never sell on social media. I use it to give things away that might connect people to things I've got going on in my platform. But I don't typically use it for directly selling anything. I use it for relationship building. That's my strategy.
Yeah, Les, you can clean up any mistakes I make here, but I think I speak for Les and myself when I say, like, we don't love social media personally. Like, and I don't have any like moral or objections to it. It's just personally, I don't love posting a bunch of stuff there. I know there's value in it. I certainly know there's value and power in it. But I'm not very good, like it, both personally and even as a whole, as a platform, we haven't been real great with a strategy for like, consistent posting. Anything that is happening there is largely due to our team, not so much because of me and Les. Is that a fair summary, Les? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's a great place to, find people, to be in front of people, to raise awareness. But as you said, you really don't own that real estate. And especially, there are different seasons where the algorithm changes. We personally know people that have really been hurt, not nothing maybe malicious was even intended. It just happened. And there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot at stake to try to build a platform on that. So I like the way you put that, John Stange, and that is that, it's extra. Down in Louisiana, they would call that lagniappe. So it's just kind of icing on the cake, a little bit extra. It is a good way to meet people, to get in front of the right people. But so it's a good
Yeah.
tool, but you need to have a lot of tools in your tool belt, probably.
So here's where we're using AI a little bit, John, and this is just really experimenting with this right now. But because again, I don't necessarily want to sit down and think of new content to make, but it's like we're already creating content. We're sitting down, we're recording audio in this podcast. We put it on YouTube because we're recording the video of it. So very recently, we started experimenting with a tool where we feed it that YouTube link of our most recent episode, and it just spits out a lot of options. It gives you titles, that you could have titled your podcast. And then sometimes I look at those and go, man, that was way better than the title I picked. And so if we can get this content in there sooner, maybe I'll steal some of the titles it suggests. But the real win has been, and I'm really excited about, is it'll spit out these little bite-sized moments, these TikTokable, YouTube short type video clips that I did not want to learn how to edit and cut and spend that time on. That AI is taking that little blip, and again, it doesn't always get it right or doesn't get the best ones maybe, but other times it does, and it's like, there you go, man. There's a free post that you can put out online. That's you. It's authentic. It's your message. It's not some AI generated thing. It's just that's the tool that made it very easy and very simple to repurpose that content. So again, we're not all in necessarily with it, but we're kind of experimenting. I was just curious where you were in your process with that.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a fun way to do it. I always tell people when it comes to social media, I think I feel somewhat like you do about it. It's something that is useful, but it's not necessarily something that I personally love. And I tend to create content that fits with what I like to consume.
Yeah.
So that's where I tend to excel. And so I was actually talking about this with our group last night. I'll share if I have to promote something. Most people think that if they're promoting something, social media is the only way to do it. I have 6 things I do anytime I'm trying to promote something. I'll just share them real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah, go right ahead.
First thing I do is I share about it on my podcasts. Second thing I do is I share about it on my blog where it gets permanently indexed in search engines. Third thing I do is I share about it on my social media. Fourth thing, I then make myself available to be a guest on other podcasts other than my own. Fifth thing I like to do is to create a brief video for YouTube that might help solve a related problem and then link to my solution in the video description. And by the way, YouTube is one of the best ways to get discovered for anything. Their search engine is one of the most effective for entrepreneurs. And then the sixth thing I like to do, and this might be the biggest of all of them, is I send a message to my email list that might include a coupon or an incentive or something like that to utilize whatever new product or service I've created. And that incorporates social media in my recipe of getting, a message out there. But I try not to rely on just one thing. I think of the things I listed there, and a good solid email list is probably the most effective of all of those things. But I find that when I use all of that together, it's a pretty effective way and pretty easy way at this point for me to get word out about something new that I might be working on.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, John, as I knew it would, the time just flies by when we're on the call together, learning from you and whatnot. I'm grateful for your time. And again, love the work that you're doing. Nothing but respect for what you're building with your Platform Launchers University and all the other things you got going on. I feel honored that you'd take some time out of your schedule to hang out with us and encourage our audience. So anything else you want to say by way of parting as we get ready to wrap things up, or did we pretty well cover it today?
Well, we pretty well covered it. And I could just let people know that if they're interested in developing an online platform, I have a free, it's a 21-day platform development planning guide that they could find at platformlaunchers.com. They could just download it right from the website, and it'll help them just figure out kind of a 3-week process of how to put their ideas together and get something launched.
Awesome, man.
Any more books in the pipeline, John?
Lots in the pipeline. I wrote Build, Grow, and Monetize Your Online Platform. That one's out there. But I also have this that'll be interesting, I think, to those that are interested in building a platform. I have the Podcaster's Playbook. And it's basically a short book on, the subtitle I put with it is Learn the Surprising Secrets to Downloads, Dollars, and Discovering Your Mission Behind the Microphone. I am a huge fan of podcasting, and I think that pastors are well suited to take over large portions of the podcast space.
So is that book out there, John? Is that
It's out there. That's right. The Podcaster's Playbook.
Sanders, that's an AI generated title if I've ever heard one.
The Podcaster's Playbook.
I bet it's not. I bet
The
John
subtitle,
not, but
especially
unless AI is stealing my ideas now. Maybe
that's
I'm
where it gets
AI.
them. It goes out there and it steals from everybody.
There you go.
That's true.
That sounds like another podcast episode, man. We may have to have you back on to talk about that book. So,
Please. It's so fun. I listen to your show all the time. You guys are the best.
awesome.
So thank you so much for letting me be a guest with you today.
Thanks, John, man. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.